Hello viewers, in the last class on Alice Walker's The Color Purple, we looked at the biography of the author, a brief overview of the novel, the epistolary form of the novel and the novel as a feminist novel. Today, we will look at some more issues within the novel, especially the themes of colonialism and homosexuality. The Color Purple has a range of characters that work together to illustrate several themes in the novel. Alfonso is called Pa by Sally and Nettie. He is their stepfather, although at first they think he is their real father. Sally is the main character in the novel. Doris Baines is the wealthy missionary Nettie meets on a ship. Eleanor Jane is the mayor's daughter who is initially oblivious to Sophia's hardships when she is forced to become the family's maid, but later attempts to right the wrongs done to Sophia. Jeremiah is a younger man whom Shug falls in love with. Grady is Shug's husband. Harpo is Sally's oldest stepchild. Kate is Mr.'s sister. She initially tries to urge Sally to stand up for herself. Miss Millie is the mayor's wife. Mr. is Sally's husband, whose real name is Albert. Nettie is Sally's younger sister. Olivia and Adam are Sally's children. Samuel and Corinne are the minister and his wife who adopt Sally's children and take Nettie under their shelter. Shug Avery is a glamorous singer. Her real name is Lily. Sophia is Harpo's independent and headstrong wife. Squeak is Harpo's biracial girlfriend whose real name is Mary Agnes. Tashi is the Olinka village girl who marries Adam. Catherine is Tashi's mother. There are other characters like the jail warden who rapes Mary Agnes and Mr.'s very young wife who make a brief appearance. The relationships between several of these characters serve to illustrate different themes like homosexual love, colonialism and racial prejudice among blacks and whites. Shug and Sally explore love outside socially sanctioned heterosexual limits. The mayor's cruel subjugation of Sophia describes the racial exploitation of black people. This is paralleled by the experience of the Olinkas in Africa. The African American vernacular English used in the novel conveys a distinct black voice. The character of Silly seems to have an autobiographical touch to her. Alice Walker used several of the stories she had heard about her grandmothers and her great-grandmothers, many of whom were ill-treated by their husbands, to fashion the character of Sally. Sally speaks a variety of English that reflects her lack of education and refinement. She is also described as being ugly several times. Yet Alice Walker foregrounds the fact that Silly is ugly only in the eyes of men and women who have adopted the male gaze. So while Pa, Mr. and initially Shug Avery, who does everything to cater to a man's idea of female beauty, all find Silly ugly, when Shug begins to look at Silly from the perspective of a woman, she begins to love her. In addition, Alice Walker has explained in many interviews done later that Silly and Nettie are actually exactly the same in appearance, yet Nettie's education makes her more attractive to men. Through the novel, we find Silly struggling to maintain her own voice. There is a gradual growth in the character of Silly through the novel, both personally as she begins to find her own strength and socially as she begins to become financially independent. In the first letter from Silly to God, we find her raped, confused, scared and hopeless. After her marriage to Mr., Silly is instrumental in lending emotional support to Mr.'s children and even becomes an instrument for Harpo's transformation. She comforts Sophia, tends to Shug, and is in turn rewarded with love and friendship by these women. Where she was timid and scared to rebel against the injustice meted to her, she finds herself livid with rage when she finds out that Mr. had been hiding Nettie's letters from her. Shug's support had allowed her to explore and express her own self. Sally comes into a good amount of money and a house at the death of her stepfather, and her newfound self-esteem finds the financial support to start a new independent life surrounded by Nettie, Samuel, their children, Sophia, Mary Agnes and Shug, all the people she loved and who loved her. At the end of the novel, we are left with a picture of black solidarity among Sally and her loved ones as they use their love and bonds of friendship to survive the subjugation by whites and by chauvinistic black men. Thus, Sally's characters depict gradual and well-developed transformation from a helpless girl to a strong, self-assured woman. Nettie. She is Sally's sister and in some ways represents what Sally could have been had she been educated. In fact, the character of Nettie serves as an alter ego to Sally. When we read of Corinne's suspicion that Adam and Olivia are Nettie's children, we see how close they are in resemblance. Nettie is educated, well-travelled, and is able to express her own perspective on her experiences, while Sally has no time to develop her own perspective as she is either involved in hard physical labor or sexually gratifying men in her life. Sophia. Sophia's character appears to be tragic. She first appears in the novel defiant and headstrong. She refuses to bow down to the wishes of her family, choosing both whom she will marry and when to keep her child. She is a stark contrast to Sally in the manner she handles men. She is undisturbed by comments passed by Mr. or by Harpo's timidity and takes charge of setting up her household. Nothing can hold her back as she doesn't even hesitate to take up traditionally male jobs like fixing the roof. She refuses to allow Harpo to suppress her, even beating him up whenever needed. She forms a wholesome relation with Sally, showing her how to stand up against men, but also leaning on her for support when she and Harpo develop differences. The scene where she and Sally stitch a patchwork quilt to tide over the anguish Sophia feels when Harpo tries to beat her epitomizes the female friendship that develop amongst oppressed women. Sophia's eventual brutal subjugation by the white mayor and his wife is testimony to the fact that the subjugation of blacks was achieved most often through brute force. They beat, blind and imprison Sophia before they can convince her to work in their house, and the white police force is the weapon for this subjugation. The insensitivity towards Sophia's desires to spend time with her family and the little remuneration she gets is representative of her forcible enslavement. Yet, Sophia is not broken in spirit, and the novel ends with her coming to work for her black friend Sally and the mayor's daughter trying to make up for her parents' sins by caring for Sophia's child Henrietta. Thus, for Sophia, at last dignity is restored and her oppressors are seen trying to make amends for past sins. Shug Avery. Shug Avery is a singer who is a strong character and is instrumental in Sally finding her own voice. She is explicit about her enjoying her femininity, however it pleases her. dressing up sexily, being sexually licentious, speaking her mind to the men who are madly after her, and developing a unique friendship and love with other women like Sally. Harpo. Harpo is Sally's stepson. Initially, he is violent and inconsiderate towards Sally, perhaps following what his father showed him. Later, he goes against his father's wishes to marry a strong-headed girl, Sophia. While Sophia is a loving wife and Harpo is happy with her, he wants to be like his father and soon tries to beat and subjugate Sophia like his father did with Sally. When he is unsuccessful, he turns to Sally for advice. While at first Sally thinks what Harpo wants is right because she has not seen women treated otherwise, she soon realizes her mistake. Although Sally tries to change Harpo's opinion of how men and women should be, Sophia gets fed up with Harpo and leaves him. Deeply saddened by it, yet knowing that things can't be different, Harpo tries to focus his energies on setting up a juke joint. His relation with his girlfriend Mary Agnes is completely different, indicating that he is a transformed man. Thus, Harpo's character is a well-rounded one with transformation and positive change indicated as the novel progresses. Mr. is Sally's husband. His real name is Albert. His first wife dies when her lover shoots her and he and the children are left alone. He marries Sally because he wants to have sex and to have someone look after his children. While he is cruel and inconsiderate with Sally, he is devoted to Shug. The way he treats Sally is in stark contrast with how he cares for Shug when she is thrown out from everywhere because she catches a sexually transmitted disease. In fact, due to Shug's intervention, he even changes his behavior towards Sally, something even his sister wasn't able to achieve. Sally and Mr. form a bond only because they both love Shug. They have an understanding only when they have to defend Shug against people like Mr.'s father and brother. Thus, Mr.'s character is a complex and multifaceted one. At times, he is depicted as gentle and loving, as in his manner towards Shug, and at others as abusive as he is towards Sally. Pa or Alfonso. He is Sally and Nettie's stepfather. At first, they believe that he is their real father and suffer the abuse he heaps on them silently. He is a character who epitomizes the black male chauvinist, sexually and physically abusing women, denying them basic rights of food, clothing and education, and treating black women across class with contempt. He does not undergo any transformation and remains abusive until the end of the novel. His death allows Sally and Nettie to inherit their father's property and begin a fresh life. Samuel. Samuel is a Christian minister who represents an emancipated black man working for the upliftment of not only blacks in America, but also in Africa. He adopts Sally's children and takes Nettie, his wife Corinne, and the children to Africa. He is instrumental in Nettie and Sally learning about their past and achieving freedom from the tyranny of male subjugation. He is supportive of Nettie and marries her after his wife's death. The character of Samuel serves as a model for the transformation of all black men, both inside the book and outside. Homosexual love in The Color Purple. Alice Walker has often described The Color Purple as a novel about love. Although popular perceptions of the novel interpret this as the love of friendship, motherly love or intimacy between the characters, homosexual love is also an important theme of the novel. This theme of love between women is at the center of the relation between Sally and Shug. Sally has experienced little love as a child or in her marriage. After marrying Albert, who sees her merely as an object for self-gratification, Sally sees Shug Avery's photograph and is instantly mesmerized by her glamorous appearance. She thinks of her all the time, even when Albert is on top of her at night. When Shug finally comes to live with them, Sally cares for her and nurtures her. They soon develop an intimate sexual relation, with Shug encouraging Sally to explore her body, teaching her about sexual pleasure and helping her discover intimacy and love. Several critics have argued that the love that develops between Sally and Shug is more of a rejection of the violence of sexual abuse as well as the male gaze rather than being valuable in itself. Some have also pointed out that while Sally and Shug transgress the heterosexual norm, they retain the male-female dichotomy of a heterosexual relation, with Shug acting like a man in the relationship. She can't sew, her children are brought up by her mother, she comments on Sophia's appearance in a typically male way. All of this makes Shug occupy a male role. However, while Walkar has often reiterated that the relation between Sally and Shug is not merely a physical one arising out of a lack of sexual choices for black women, instead it is both an emotional and a physical relation that they enter into by choice. For both women, their love is a way to self-discovery, personal growth and a way to forgive those who have wronged them. The black voice in The Color Purple. Alice Walker has often described the vernacular English Sally uses as a metaphor for the African American woman's voice. This use of the dialect sets Sally apart from not only standard white Americans, but also others like Corinne and Nettie, who are educated black women and have the admiration of at least their own communities. The novel emphasizes the idea of a unique self that is represented through the voice used. Sally and Nettie have different perceptions and abilities for articulation. By retaining a difference in voice, Walker emphasizes the uniqueness of Sally's individual self. Initially, Sally is unaccustomed to expressing herself, but with Sophia and Shug's interventions, she begins to discover her own self, anger and even sexuality. Sally uses words like git instead of get or asked instead of asked, lending her character a distinct personality marked by the lack of education or exposure. Another source for a black voice and identity is through Nettie's letters that are a testimony to the experiences of native African Olinkas. The usage of terms like sass, a word used by blacks in America to refer to a womanish woman, by Shug also indicate the existence of a unique black American reality. Here, glamour and style place people like Shug in a different category from ordinary African Americans. She asserts her independence and command even in her language, making up words to describe what she feels. For example, when she is irritated with the smell of Albert's empty pipe, she says, "I don't want to smell no stinking blankety blank pipe. You hear me, Albert?" In all cases in the novel, a voice is used to indicate awareness or realization of a unique identity. Through this use of voice and narrative, The Color Purple serves as a historical document of the early 20th century African American, especially women's experiences. Colors in the novel. The novel uses colors to represent various moods and themes. The color purple is first mentioned when Sally describes her awakening to the presence of God. She feels it is the color of love, and so she paints her room purple when she finally breaks free of the chains of oppression. Mr. paints his house white in the end, indicating a transformation and growth. Sally and Sophia stitch a quilt from Shug's yellow dress, the brightness of the color indicating their newly blooming friendship. Novel against exploitation. The Color Purple explicitly addresses the question of racial, sexual and social oppression. The novel received severe criticism from both white men and women, as well as black men, including people uncomfortable with the idea of love between the same sex. Yet, the transformative potential of the novel lies in precisely these areas. Alice Walker developed